Hey everybody, welcome into my next team preview video. I'm going to be doing the Kansas City Chiefs as I continue my team preview series. After today, we only got one last team left, and as you probably can guess, it's the Super Bowl winners, the Bucks. So let's go ahead and get into this Kansas City Chiefs video. Just in case I have a first-time listener that haven't seen the previous 30 videos, what you can expect is I'm going to share my thoughts on Andy Reid. That's going to be very quick with his resume. Talk about the team's remaining cap space. Take a look at remaining guys entering a contract year. Take a look at the offense, the defense. Give my overall feelings on the Chiefs, and then I do on the offensive side of the ball give it a more of a fantasy football perspective, just in case you want to hear who I'm trying to target, who I am trying to avoid in drafts. But let's just go ahead and get into this. Andy Reid, obviously, he's one of the best coaches in NFL history. Longtime success at the Eagles. Turned things around with the Chiefs. Went up and got Patrick Mahomes in the draft. Obviously, he worked with the GM on doing that to replace Alex Smith with in the future, and it benefited. They won the Super Bowl. Now, obviously, they fell short of their expectations last year, losing to the Bucks in that game. But again, they made back-to-back Super Bowls, and they're going to be looking to be a three-peat AFC Conference Championship winner once again in 2021. But yeah, there's nothing really to pick apart about his resume. He's a Super Bowl winning coach, and he wins no matter where he goes. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the team's remaining cap space. They are currently sitting at $7.9 million in cap space. So that's a little wiggle room they can work with if they wanted to acquire anybody, but I think their main focus is those top two names right now that are entering a contract year. Let's just go ahead and switch to that. Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger himself, the most important person, in my opinion, on the Chiefs defense outside of Chris Jones, is the Honey Badger because of his versatility, his leadership, his ability to put everybody in a good position in the secondary to succeed, and his ability to create those turnovers in crucial moments and get his hand on the ball. So that's what I'm kind of looking at, seeing if they can work out something prior to the season with him, because I'm sure this might be one of his last stops where he would want to not have to go to another team in his career, because he started off at Arizona, went to Houston for a year, and now he's up here, not up here, but up in Kansas City. So that's the one I'm kind of looking at, because I think this defense will be completely different next year if Tyrann Mathieu's not in that starting lineup. I think that's when you can kind of maybe start to poke holes in this Kansas City team. We're kind of, I'm projecting in the future, but that's the guy I'm kind of looking for them to work on something. Now, the other guy, they have to. They kind of put themselves in a corner with Orlando Brown Jr., but they traded a first and I want to say a third or fourth round pick. I know it was multiple draft picks to acquire Orlando Brown Jr. to be their new left tackle. So they sent all that capital for him, and they have not yet worked out a contract extension with him. Now, I do remember when the trade originally went down. I'm not sure who reported it. I want to say maybe it was Schefter. Somebody reported that, the Chiefs are content, I guess, with the plan that, if they can't work out an extension with Brown, they're okay giving him the franchise tag at the end of the season. So if they're going to maybe give Orlando Brown the franchise tag, that means they can't give that to Tyrann Mathieu, right? So that's why I'm looking at maybe Mathieu working out an extension prior to the season, and then they're probably going to wait and try to do Brown. Plus, they probably want to see how Brown does perform on a full season stretch at the left tackle position. So those are the two names to watch over the next few weeks prior to the season. Charvarius Ward's, he's a solid cornerback, but I don't see them working out anything. Same thing with Derek Nottie. He's just going to be seeing more playing time this year. Those guys, I don't see it working out. Their main priorities is the Tyrann Mathieu and Orlando Brown Jr. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and keep this moving into the offensive preview. Now these are the projected starters per the man himself, Roy Countryman. You can follow Roy on Twitter at PreacherBoyRoy. He is the founder, he is the curator of the Prospect Encyclopedia, and that's where these are pulled from. The starters that as far as projected starters. Now keep in mind, if you do see any stars next to the name, that means those guys actually have a scouting report written by Roy in the Prospect Encyclopedia, which you can go check out at prospectencyclopedia.com. I'm going to go ahead and keep this moving. Let's start with the man himself, at Mr. MVP, Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes has obviously been, you could argue, the best quarterback over the last 3 seasons, and he has all the stats to back that up. He has all the film to back that up, and he's going to continue continue to make his imprint on the NFL history as he continues to put his name on more records as he goes through his career. Now, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at some of the stats that he popped up for me when I did my research this summer. Patrick Mahomes is actually currently on the longest active streak with at least one passing touchdown a game. So he's on a 25-game streak of having at least one passing touchdown. Now, this happened during his MVP year a couple years ago, but this is technically since 2018. But he is one of those 8 quarterbacks in NFL history that have a season of 4,500 plus passing yards, 30 plus touchdowns, and 10 or fewer interceptions. Now, taking a look at the other stats he popped up on since 2018, he has the most passing touchdowns. He has the most passing yards per game. He has the most passing yards per attempt. He's got the second most overall passing yards, the second best passer rating. And among quarterbacks, he has the second most fantasy football points per game. He's tied for the 5th most comebacks, and he actually has the 8th most rushing yards among all quarterbacks. And that's one of the things I think actually people don't give much credit for is his legs. He has such a good understanding of the game because he takes advantage of like Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, McCole Hardman, all like taking the secondary deep, and everybody forgets that he can scoot in a quick manner for 10 yards to get the first down. So he does a nice job keeping drives alive. Obviously, he has an unbelievable arm talent. There's nothing for me to nitpick about. He's a top quarterback in the league. He's the number 1 quarterback in my opinion in the NFL, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. In terms of fantasy, yeah, I totally get it. If you want to take him, Patrick Mahomes will win you fantasy football games. He'll probably win you 5 to 6 fantasy football games in a season. So I don't blame people if they want to draft him in the 2nd or 3rd overall, just because how good he is. I think I mentioned this when I was talking about Lamar. I think in terms of a fantasy quarterback, like, yeah, I might not get a Patrick Mahomes because like I'm one of those guys that prefer to wait to get my quarterback, but I also get it too because when Peyton Manning was the quarterback of the Colts, I was taking Peyton Manning in the 2nd round. That's how I view them. They're guys that can win you about 5 to 6 games, and if you're that big of a fan of the guy, go ahead and pull the trigger. I don't blame you at all. He's going to win you some games this year. And then, yeah, so I don't have to speak much more on Mahomes. He's the best quarterback in the league. Taking a look at the running back position, they got Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming back, their 1st-round pick from last year, who kind of had like an up and down year. Just his down parts of the year were mainly because of injuries. His up parts of the year were when he was on the field, he looked really good. He was very productive within the offense, and I think he could definitely take that next step in year 2. With the retooled offensive line, it should be a lot better to open up holes for Clyde. He'll be utilized in the passing attack. Now, I know it's not like a major loss, but with them, moving on from like Sammy Watkins, he wasn't on the team last year, but Damian Williams, they released him. There's like behind Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, there's like a competition to see who can lead the team in the 3rd most targets, and Clyde can be a benefit in the passing attack, so he can be used in the screen game and on dump offs as well. So I think he can provide value there. Now, there's been some reports that their backup, Jerick McKinnon, who they signed, has been having a strong training camp. So maybe he's going to cut into his touches I'm not 100% buying on that because, at one point, McKinnon couldn't even play a game for the 49ers last year because he had tired legs. But I do think he'll probably get a handful of snaps in. Not a handful. He'll probably get 10 to 15 touches if the reports are true. But other than that, I think this is Clyde's backfield as long as he is healthy. I know he got banged up in that preseason game the other night. But as long as he's healthy, I view him as more of a RB3 flex right now because I'm not for sure how big of a role he's going to have, but he can eventually be a RB2 in a lineup. So that's where I'm currently viewing Clyde. I could definitely see myself taking a chance on him in drafts just because, like I said, I could see him being a vital part of their passing attack this year. Now, I'm going to go ahead and keep it moving to the wide receiver position. Obviously, they got the man himself, Tyreek Hill. I'll talk about him in a second. They got McCole Hardman. That's the guy I'm keeping my eye on. That's a guy I'm willing to take a double-digit round swing on, a dart throw on out of this wide receiver room. McCole Hardman was a second-round pick. He's entering year 3. So for those that have watched my videos, I love year 3 wide receivers in fantasy football. So if he could take that next year 3 step and he can actually be the guy that actually does get the third most targets in the passing attack, he's a guy that can provide you like flex wide receiver 3 play. And then on the good weeks that Mahomes is connecting with him on those big long touchdowns, he could give you a wide receiver 1 week, like 2 to 3 weeks throughout the season. So that's the guy I'm watching because of his explosive playmaking ability. They still got Demarcus Robinson there. Brian Pringle's probably going to be more of a contributor this year. And then another guy that I know that Roy likes, he has him projected as a starter. Another guy I like too from out of Clemson, which is Cordell Powell. So they're going to work him in the rotation. So you got Tyreek Hill sitting there at the top, and then McCole Hardman, I think he can potentially lead those guys in targets, but don't be surprised if McCole does not deliver. It's going to be a rotation between Hardman, Powell, Demarcus Robinson, and Brian Pringle. Now, I held this guy off for last because I wanted to save him to connect him with Travis Kelce because I'm just going to probably go back-to-back on those guys. So obviously Patrick Mahomes can make it work with any wide receiver and tight end, in my opinion, because of how talented he is. But it does help that he is a great wide receiver in Tyreek Hill and the best tight end in the league. If not, I think at the end of the day, when his career is done, people are going to argue if Travis Kelce might be the best tight end in NFL history. He's going to have a strong argument when you look at the stats, I believe, at the end of the day. But taking a look at these guys and how much they have contributed to the Chiefs over the last 3 years, starting with Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill since 2018. He's one of 3 players with 2 seasons of 80-plus receptions, 1,000-plus yards, and 10-plus touchdowns. So I covered the other day, the other player, which is Davante Adams. Spoiler alert, the other player is Travis Kelce. So 2 of those 3 players are on the same team that have had 2 seasons of the 80-plus receptions, 1,000-plus yards, and 10-plus touchdowns. So it's a benefit when you're that talented yourself and you play with the most talented quarterback in the league. Now, some other stats he popped up on for Tyreek Hill. He has the 2nd most receiving touchdowns. He has the 3rd most fantasy football points per game among wide receivers. He's tied for the 5th most total touchdowns among all skill position players. He's got the 6th most receiving yards per game, and he's got the 6th most receiving yards. So he's been a top 10 fantasy wide receiver over the last 3 years. I don't expect that to change. You could draft him as your wide receiver 1. He's going to give you wide receiver 1 numbers throughout the season. And he's a guy where when Patrick Mahomes is winning you games in your lineup, so is Tyreek Hill. And one of the things I do like to preach on before I move on to Kelce's numbers is I love this thing called fantasy love. It's from my friends back in Missouri. One of my good friends, Rance, one of my old roommates, one of my best friends. We used to, every time we would try to stack players, everybody knows about that, teaming up a quarterback with maybe a wide receiver or a tight end or even a running back. And every time that quarterback would throw that touchdown to that wide receiver, we called it fantasy love. And basically, you double up your points because you're getting the touchdown not only from the wide receiver but also the quarterback. So if you do draft Patrick Mahomes, I always advise maybe try to get Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce, because when Patrick Mahomes is connecting with Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce throughout the season, you're doubling your points and you're probably going to win that week. So that's something to think of when you're doing these drafts over these next couple of weeks. Now, moving on to Travis Kelce, let's take a look at him since 2018. Obviously, I just mentioned the thing. He's one of the three players with Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams with 2 seasons of 80-plus reception yards, 1,000-plus yards, 10-plus touchdowns since 2018. He's actually currently tied for the 5th longest active streak with at least 1 reception at 110 games in a row. And then among tight ends, he's got the most receiving touchdowns. He has the most receiving yards per game. He has the most overall receiving yards. He has the most receptions by a wide margin, too. And then he's got the 6th most yards per reception. And then among running backs and wide receivers, he has the 8th most scrimmage yards. So I'm kind of getting on this board where if all the good running backs go in the top of the first round, and there's not maybe a Devontae Adams or a top wide receiver I want, man, I'm kind of getting behind the idea you can draft Travis Kelce in the first round. For sure in the second round, but in that back end of the first round, I definitely get it, because tight ends are such an annoying thing to own in fantasy, and Travis Kelce is about it. Not only he's as safe as a tight end you can get, but he puts up basically wide receiver 1 numbers with Patrick Mahomes. So yeah, I totally get anybody that wants to draft him at the back end of the first. So yeah, he's a stud. And then I don't know if he's going to get much playing time, but watch out for Noah Gray. I've heard some good reports out of him out of camp. So yeah, other than that, I mean, yeah, the offense runs through Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Kelce. Now, obviously, when the team entered the offseason, there was a lot of questions surrounding their offensive line. That showed up in that Super Bowl loss to the Bucks, because they just kept on getting early pressure on Patrick Mahomes, and they did everything they can to retool for this upcoming season. As I mentioned earlier, they made the trade for Orlando Brown Jr. They signed Joe Thuney, who's one of the best guards in the league. And then they added some guys through free agency. They originally added Kyle Long, but he's hurt, so he's going to start the season on PUP list. And then who else did they add? They brought back Lauren Duvernay-Tardif, who was opted out last year. They still have Andrew Wiley and Mike Remmers on the lineup as well. So they have some veterans, but they happen to just somehow also retool the right side of their line because of how well they drafted this year in the past couple of years, and the guys that just happened to fall into their lap. They got Creed Humphrey, who was a top center out of Oklahoma this year, and he's going to fill in nicely. Trey Smith was a top guard out of Tennessee, and I'm not sure why he fell to where he did. He can be an immediate contributor, and it sounds like he will be out of 10. So he's going to be a nice addition for the line. And then Lucas Niang basically opted out. He opted out last year, but he was coming off I believe a hip injury, if I remember that right. So he was probably going to not play anyways much last year out of TCU, and he has great starting ability. And it sounds like all 3 players have been impressive during camp as well. So they have retooled their line where they're going to be a lot bigger, a lot stronger, a lot sturdier. So they should be a lot better at protecting Patrick Mahomes, which is a great thing for him, because that just gives him more time to scan the field. Now, we got to be realistic too. These are year 1. Basically, you can count Niang as a year 1 player since he opted out last year. So these 3 players are basically rookies. So I mean, I don't think it's going to be a perfect, start to the season. I think they will definitely have their lapses. They're going to have to learn, how to battle with those smart veteran defensive linemen that know how to utilize their pass rush moves. So it might not be perfect to start the year, but I think as the season progresses, the line will get better, the line will gel together, and it'll be one of the more impressive units towards the back end of the year. But there may be some up and downs as they progress at the beginning of the season. But overall, it's going to be once again a top 5 offense. Anytime you got Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill working together, they're going to put up a lot of yards and points throughout the season. Now, taking a switch over to their defense, again, these are the projected starters out of the Prospect Encyclopedia per Roy Countryman. Go give my man Roy a follow at Preacher Boy Roy on Twitter. And let's just take a look at their defense. Let's start at the front. Their defensive front is going to be really good this year. They got Chris Jones, he's arguably a top 3 defensive tackle. You can debate between him and DeForest Buckner. Who do you choose to be the D tackle behind Aaron Donald? But Chris Jones is going to be very impressive, I think, this year. I think he's going to add something else to his resume. They're actually lining him up outside on the edge this year, and based on that preseason game rep that he showed, he looks like he's pass rush moves that he's got developed over these last few years. He's going to be a force off the edge. And then you got Frank Clark coming off the opposite side, who's a very good edge rusher in his right. And then I like Derek Nottie in the middle. He's solid. And then the one of the sneakier additions for Kansas City was getting Jarron Reed from the Seahawks. His play maybe has been up to par over the last year and a half. I think he was dealing with an injury at one point. So as long as he's fully healthy and he can get back to that level of play we once saw in his career, this is a not only very stout defensive front that can help stop the run, but it's going to be able to start creating more pressure, because I think Frank Clark and Chris Jones are going to be able to collapse the pocket on whoever they're facing. Now, where you kind of get some concern at is maybe you get, really quick, before I move further, I forgot I had some stats on Chris Jones. Chris Jones, since 2018, he has the 4th most quarterback hits. That's with 77. And then he's got the 7th most sacks. So yeah, he's already been productive working the interior of the defensive line. Now they're probably gonna move him all over. I'm sure he's gonna still kick inside during certain situations, but yeah, he's been a dominant force to say the least. But yeah, going to what I was about to say, the linebacker group is probably the biggest concern on this defense. Anthony Hitchens is all right as a starting veteran linebacker. Willie Gay Jr. has some potential, as well as Nick Bolton, to be some good linebackers in this league. But as you can see with that star next to their name, that means they have less than 12 regular season starts. So those are guys who are going to be still kind of learning the nuances of the game. But I think they can utilize the good defensive front in front of them, and they should be able to have an easier path to flow throughout the field, to make plays, to fill up gaps and help stop the run. So they do definitely want to come together, but I'd put it as an below average linebacker group right now, because we need to see who Willie Gay Jr. is going to be. He has all the athletic talent to be a really good linebacker, but we need to see him put it together, and we got to see how fast Nick Bolton's play can translate into the NFL into year one. So, but I think they can work themselves into an average group, and I think an average group can get enough out of this defense in Kansas City. And then taking a look at their secondary, it's overall a really good I'm gonna say it's a pretty solid secondary. Charvarius Ward, like I said, he's a solid cornerback. Rashad Fenton showed some good things, and he'll work inside as a nickel back. I think sometimes he does kick outside as well. The guy that was really impressive, who really came on strong last year, is L'Jarius Sneed. You see the star next to his name, but he shouldn't have the star next to his name. He just got unlucky and broke his collarbone in week 2 or 3, so he had to miss a lot of games. Other than that, he would have been starting over the 12 game maximum that we put on that requirement for the encyclopedia. But he was a really great find by the front office there in Kansas City. So I like the little combination of Ward, Fenton, and Sneed. I think they're solid. I wanted to call it overly impressive, but a very solid group. But Sneed's a guy to watch as a playmaker. And then don't keep in mind though, Mike Hughes, they traded from him from the Vikings. I was such a huge Mike Hughes fan. He just has been banged up with his neck over when he was up in Minnesota. Whenever I watched the Chiefs game when they played, I think it was the Niners the other day, I thought he showed some potentially good things. So if he's fully healthy, I would not be surprised if Mike Hughes works into the starting rotation at some point. And they got DeAndre Baker. He was a former first-round pick as well from the Giants. They signed him after he had that whole off-field controversy that got cleared. The Giants released him, but that was before he got cleared. After he got cleared, the Chiefs signed him, and then I think he got hurt at some point last year. So we'll have to see if maybe he still can maybe live up to that first-round billing that he once had. So they got some other guys they can work in that rotation. So I like their cornerback group. I think it's a lot better than what it was last year. And then I think Juan Thornhill and Tyrann Mathieu make a really good safety tandem. Juan Thornhill, I think, is starting to come back to that player he was before he had his injury. And so I think he's going to be a staple that can create turnovers on the back end of the defense with his speed and his ability to be a back end coverage guy. And then Tyrann Mathieu, I talked him up. He's one of the best safeties, one of the best defenders in the league. Let's take a look at him since 2018. He's actually one of 10 players with a season of 75 plus tackles, 12 plus pass deflections, and 3 plus interceptions. And then since 2018, he's tied for the third most interceptions. So like I said, he's a very important part of this defense, and I think they should do everything they can to try to keep him on the team for at least the next 2 to 3 seasons if they can work out a team-friendly contract extension with him. Overall, though, this defense, I mean, yeah, I think they got a really good defensive front. Like I said, I think the linebackers are good enough where they should be able to just at least do their job and be productive and help stop the run. And then I like their secondary because I think they got some more cornerback depth, which will help them out in case injuries were to occur again. And I think they got some nice, decent. I also like their depth on the defensive front. Now you do get some concerns because if that linebacker group isn't playing up to par, and then if they maybe deal with injuries, there's not a lot of depth that gets you excited. So if there's one leaky hole is maybe their linebacker group. Maybe they struggle to defend the middle of the field in passing situations. But overall, it should be a pretty solid defense there in Kansas City. And then yeah, so that's that's the offense and defense. My overall feelings on Kansas City is they're one of the best teams in the league. Once again, they have everything what it takes to once again get to the Super Bowl and win another Super Bowl. Now I will admit, I said on my Bills preview yesterday, I think the Bills have the deepest roster in the AFC. But at the end of the day, back-to-back AFC championships, it's the Chiefs, and then it's the Bills, and then there's a number of teams that are going to be pushing for the Chiefs. So until the Chiefs fall off a cliff, until somebody beats them in the playoffs, they are the team to beat in the AFC. Nothing's going to change again. They're going to be a top 5 offense. I think their defense is a lot better than it was last year. So nothing should stop them from winning the AFC West, and nothing should stop them from going on a deep postseason run. And as long as they handle their business, they're probably going to be representing the AFC in the Super Bowl once again. But yeah, that's my video for you guys today. If you enjoyed this video, as always, please hit that like button. If you had not subscribed to my channel yet, please subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to hopefully get that number rolling, start to gain some momentum as we head closer to the season debut with the Cowboys and Bucks game that kicks off in a couple weeks. And then other than that, one last thing to plug. If you guys have not yet checked out the Prospect Encyclopedia, please go check it out. It's such a great content. I've been reading it ever since it came out last week. We have a lot of amazing writers that were involved with the project. My man Rob has it looking so great. He's got some fun facts in every team section for you to read as well. And it's just a overall great product, and what you can expect out of it. Basically, it's over 700 player profiles on all 32 teams. Every team has a top 22 player list. In order to make that player list, you have to be from the last 3 draft classes. You have to have less than 12 regular season starts. So these are guys that are anywhere from core special team guys, maybe some guys on the practice squad that will come up later in the season, to role players that work their way into the rotation, to future superstars of the league, guys that maybe are just now coming into the league from this past draft class, or maybe guys that have slowly developed over the next, over their first year or two, and we think they're going to take that next step in 2021. So it's something great for you to check out. If you're a Chiefs fan, you can order the Chiefs section to read Roy's work for only $1. But as I always say, why just get the Chiefs section for $1 when you can get all 32 teams for $15? And here's the thing, if you want to maybe get an idea of what it looks like, the Buck section, which I wrote, is actually free for download. You can download the PDF of the Buck section, look it over, see if this impresses you, and if it does, go order that Chiefs section for $1 if you're a fan, or go get the whole thing for $32. But yeah, please go check that out. That's my video today. Next team I'm doing is the Bucks, and the 32 team season preview video series will be wrapped up. So I'll see you guys tomorrow when I do my Tampa video.